Paraguay is not considered a tax haven. Even though Paraguay legally allows people to reduce their tax bill to near zero, both the OECD and the European Union treat it as fully compliant. Now, that might sound like a big contradiction, I'm sure. But before we go any further, we need to clarify one thing. A tax haven is not defined per se by low taxes, it's defined by lack of transparency, lack of cooperation, and the use of abusive tax regimes. And that distinction is exactly what most people get wrong about Paraguay. So in this video, I'll explain exactly why Paraguay passes international tax scrutiny and why it's neither blacklisted nor graylisted in all the most important lists. To begin with, what are the criteria that determine when a country should be considered graylist or blacklist? The OECD is the body that uses the most detailed and stringent criteria to determine the level of transparency and cooperation of each state. The main areas analyzed are: first, transparency in the exchange of tax information; second, the transparency in the exchange of banking information; and third, the existence of privileged tax regimes. Regarding the exchange of tax information, Paraguay is a member of the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes. This should entail an assessment by the OECD on the country's accounting transparency and information exchange, which concludes with a judgment that can be compliant, largely compliant, partly compliant, or not compliant. In 2023, Paraguay underwent this investigation, which takes into consideration many aspects reported here. In almost all fields, Paraguay received a rating of either needs improvement, which is the lowest judgment assigned by the OECD, or not applicable. But it demonstrated having taken at least the bare minimum necessary steps, for example, in terms of company registration and access to information on the beneficial owners of companies, so that in the end, the overall judgment was not applicable. But despite this, a cheerful green dot is shown on the OECD map for Paraguay. It certainly won't be the top of the class, but from this point of view, Paraguay has been promoted. After all, the OECD framework is much more focused on banks and multinational corporations than on individuals or digital nomads who just have a single-member LLC somewhere in Wyoming, and on certain things they are not even taken into consideration by the rating system. Regarding the exchange of banking information instead, Paraguay has this amusing tendency to establish a commitment to enter the CRS system at some point and then to postpone the entry. And while Trump is rendering supranational bodies like the OECD completely useless, the system plays in Paraguay's favor. Especially consider that banking secrecy is part of Paraguay's constitution and was reinforced by a new law in 2023 that further refers to this type of personal data protection. Paraguay has found a very correct middle ground. In the event of an express investigation, the data of the investigated person can be requested to the banks, but automatic exchange of customer transactions cannot be done, nor can it be revealed to everyone what they buy, where they invest, or how much money they have in the bank, as the European Union would like it to be. The CRS system, which provides for an automatic exchange of information without any requests and without any specific reason, is totally incongruent with Paraguay's current laws. But at the same time, it is not a jurisdiction that protects banking secrecy even for dangerous matters such as criminal cases, money laundering, or drug trafficking. For this reason, in the OECD analysis, it found a fair space between not being fully compliant, but at the same time having equipped itself with at least the necessary mechanisms to conduct the international investigation should the need arise. Lastly, the point you are probably wondering about the most: the issue of the Paraguayan tax law and its compliance with the OECD criteria. To begin with, Paraguay very easily passed the BEPS, Base Erosion and Profit Sharing Criterion, which concerns not allowing the formation of offshore shell companies without any physical base in the country where they are located. From this point of view, as we also saw in our video dedicated to the foolish possibility of opening an offshore company in Paraguay, the country offers no concrete benefit. Even the advantageous tax regimes that exist for companies, such as Maquila, only concern companies that have concrete operations based in Paraguay. Regarding the tax burden on individuals and companies, Paraguay has a nominal rate of 10%, which cannot be considered, especially for a landlocked developing country, an abusive rate compared to international criteria. Of course, compared to other countries, it has the very important characteristic of having a territorial tax system. But this means nothing. Even the US has a territorial tax system to some extent regarding, for example, the famous possibility of opening a non-resident LLC remote. Hong Kong, to a large extent also the United Kingdom with the LLPs, Georgia, Malaysia, Thailand, Costa Rica, they all have to a lesser or greater extent a territorial tax regime, and many others could also be mentioned. Instead, it is interesting to analyze the fact that Paraguay does not require to remain in the national territory for more than a certain number of days, such as 183 in most cases, like other countries do to be considered a tax resident. But this in reality is not even one of the criteria taken into consideration by the OECD. We all know that the definition of blacklist and grey list are no longer so important, and in a certain sense, in a world much more polarized than before, where every bloc on the planet just thinks about pursuing its own interests rather than cooperation at an international level, in a world where even NATO and the UN have lost their meaning and their weight, the OECD can basically just follow suit. This is why blocks of countries and individual countries are increasingly resorting to their own lists, as the European Union is trying to do, causing a mosaic of colors around the world where words like blacklist and grey list have now become vintage, kind of a memory of the 80s, if not antiquated altogether. And with this, I hope you have now a much clearer understanding of what a tax haven actually is and why Paraguay is not considered a grey list or blacklist country. That international compliance is exactly why Paraguay is a safer alternative to traditional tax havens and continues to attract entrepreneurs, investors, and digital nomads. It's not about hiding money or breaking rules, it's about transparency, compliance, and a system designed differently from most countries. That's all from Asunción for today, and as always, I'll see you in Paraguay!